Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Inside Movies Galore. I'm your host, David Streggy, and here in the room I have legendary filmmaker Gregory Lambertson. Welcome, Greg. Can I call you Greg?
Please call me Greg. It's better than Frank.
Awesome. So, Greg, why don't you tell me a little bit about your how you got into the film making business and how it led you to making Slime City and how you got involved in that.
Okay. Well, I loved monsters from the time I watched cartoons as a kid, which would be in the 1960s. And I suppose around the time Star Wars came out, I decided I wanted to be a director. I went to New York City, studied filmmaking for 1 year at the School of Visual Arts, where Roy Frumkus, who wrote and produced Street Trash, was one of my instructors, and Jim Muro, who went on to direct Street Trash, was a classmate.
Okay.
And when I landed in New York City, Basket Case was enjoying its midnight run, and shortly thereafter, at one of many movie theater jobs I had, we had the theatrical run of The Deadly Spawn, and we had the world premiere of Evil Dead.
Okay.
So I was surrounded basically by 16 millimeter films that were showing in movie theaters, and I decided I did not want to make Super 8 short films in film school. So I left film school and I wrote Slime City almost immediately.
Okay.
And after that, I was looking for a job working on a low budget horror film so I could see exactly how to turn Slime City. And I became the production manager working for free on a film called I Was a Teenage Zombie. And Robert Sabin, who's the star of Slime City, I got him a job in the cast.
Okay.
And Peter Clark, who was my director of photography on Slime City, I got him a job as the AC. So basically all three of us used I Was a Teenage Zombie as a dry run for our own film, Slime City.
Cool. And about how long was your filming schedule on the film Slime City for you?
Most of my films have 18-day shooting schedules now. I think on Slime City we might have done 20. They were very long days, and we shot that on 16 millimeter film, so there's a lot more involved as far as loading the camera and taking breaks and dealing with the technical issues. Plus, we were all newcomers. None of us knew what we were doing, despite I Was a Teenage Zombie, which shows in the finished film, I think.
Awesome. Now, from what I understand, it's coming up on its 30th anniversary, correct?
We are during our in the midst of our 30th anniversary, since it played as a midnight movie in New York City. That's when the film was unleashed on the world, so to speak.
Very cool.
So, I mean, depending on how you look at it, we sort of had a 30th anniversary already for when we shot the film, which was 2 years before it played as a midnight film. But this is the official 30th anniversary.
Nice. So, ultimately, was there anything that was going on while you were filming that you can actually remember that maybe might have been like the best thing that you can remember while you were filming on set?
Well, I remember the whole experience vividly because probably the most exciting time of my life until we shot the sequel, Slime City Massacre, like 20 odd years later. One of the things that I enjoyed most is my apartment, which is where we shot the film, was in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. Okay. And Scott Coulter and Tom Lawton, who were the effects artists, had their effects lab and their apartment less than a mile from where I was. So I would hop on my bike during pre-production and bike through Brooklyn to their neighborhood and stop by and see all the sculptures they were doing and the appliances. And for me, the first time seeing someone make monsters from my ideas was really the most exciting thing. I was just so jazzed, and I dreamed of making films for so many years. Now it seems like such a short period of time compared to how long I've been doing this, but it was just really exciting to see things coming together.
Sounds like it. I mean, it must seem like it was just yesterday for you at least. I mean, for some of it, because of going, going through some of the processes of getting it out on Scream just recently, and going through that process of remastering the negatives and all that jazz. Correct?
Well, I'm not a vampire, so I do have mirrors in my. So I'm well aware of the passage of time. But if I think of the long periods of inactivity in between films, and sort of cut those out of the fabric, the tapestry does seem to be fairly recent.
Brandon, you were recently subjected to the film. So did you have any questions that you wanted to ask Mr. Lambertson here while I'm on the air here?
Fire away, Brandon. I'm not sensitive.
Well, I actually, it's an honor to actually get to meet with you after spending so much time with the Slime City and Slime City Massacre. I've been scouring through the film for an upcoming review on the full package of the Blu-ray release.
Right.
And I had thought that the movie both went together so well with the plot line, though I know in the commentary you had said that a lot of it was kind of forming as you went along as far as the concept, the starting concept and then the ending concept, which to me felt like it all fell together, especially after I watched Slime City Massacre. Do you feel like there was a general overarching theory that you'd had for the whole?
Well, I had made a short film, Visual Arts, which is glimpsed in one of the extras called Making Slime. And it was just a little thing about my college roommate buys some bad booze, he drinks it, and these little claymation snakes that look like Kermit the Frog. It was inspired by Frank Zappa's Bad Worms, believe it or not. That short film is what morphed into Slime City. And all I knew when I wrote the script was I knew what the whole ending was. And I knew that everything leading up to the end would sort of be my take on Rosemary's Baby. My partner, Peter Clark, at the time, he loved The Evil Dead. So I knew I wanted to tell a story that would get him excited with the ending and that I would be excited with all the character development and gradual storytelling.
And the ending is really hard to get to begin with. I mean, it's hard to pick an ending, too, when you're thinking about an ending. But you already knew your ending, so that was a plus.
I did. And, except that different drafts of the script may have had a few more gags that we weren't able to do on our budget, the ending was the same all the way through. The idea of a guy slowly turning into slime, I freely admit I lifted from a Peter Straub novel called Floating Dragon. And that had a subplot about a guy who liquefies that, as far as I know, had nothing to do with the rest of the book. But that is where I got the general idea. And I'm from a small town, and I moved to New York City when I was 17, and we lived in a dorm on 34th Street and 9th Avenue. It was in a YMCA, populated, and we would have breakfast at diners with hookers who were getting off their shift. And right across the street was the New Yorker building, which was the home base for the Moonies cult, which is now the Unification Church. Okay. So we had the pimps, the hookers, and the cult all around us. And all of this stuff, just by osmosis, figured into the story. But when I would write the script on a manual typewriter, I would literally get to a point where I would say, okay, something has to happen here. Got to the and stuff. I had no idea. I just sat there at the typewriter. Was like, okay, there has to be some sort of explanation for this stuff. So it was all very haphazard. And a lot of people call the plot, just ridiculous and nonsensical, and that's fine. It really was. I didn't refine it much in subsequent drafts. Mm-hmm. But I kind of became intrigued with the backstory I came up with, which was really why I did the sequel all those years later. I thought, we can have some fun actually getting into that cult. And the challenge to me was try to make that aspect of the story somehow make sense.
I thought it really did tie it all together once I saw it after seeing the sequel, it really did help me a lot with the first film.
I think they work in tandem that way, yeah. And there's a lot of jokes in the sequel that people won't get unless they see the first film. You know, famously in the first one, the prostitute gives that awful delivery where she says, "You crazy bastard." So when I had a scene with a hooker and a pimp in the sequel, I deliberately had him come in and overact, "You crazy bastard." So there's lots of little nods like that only fans will get.
Totally understand. So ultimately, now you wrote and did shot the short film Making Slime before you did Slime City. Now after Slime City, you which is the short film that you did next? Would that be Johnny Gruesome, or would that be Undying Love, or?
Well, after Slime City, I did a vampire film called Undying Love, which is a feature. It's sort of a cross between Martin and a noir story. And until Slime City Massacre, that was actually my favorite of my films. And then I did another feature on Hi-8 Video called Naked Fear, which is available as an extra on the regular Slime City DVD and as a separate feature on the Slime City Grindhouse collection, which has Slime City, Naked Fear, Undying Love, and this short film Johnny Gruesome. I didn't do Johnny Gruesome until, I don't know, 2006 maybe. By then, the script for Johnny Gruesome I wrote at the same time as Slime City, the feature-length script.
Okay.
And after about 10 years, I couldn't get the film made because I needed a bigger budget for that one. So I turned it into a novel, which did very well. And some friends of mine did a rock CD based on the novel. So I said, well, let's do a music video. And the music video turned into like 2 songs. So it's like a music, it's almost like Thriller in that it's way longer than it should have been. But that was just designed as a promotional piece for the rock CD and for the novel. Now, many years later, about a year and a half ago, I did make the movie Johnny Gruesome on a $250,000 budget, and it'll probably be out October, I would think.
Okay.
And so that's my first film with a decent budget.
Well, congrats about having that decent budget. I mean, sometimes it all depends. Sometimes on the low budget atmosphere, and sometimes, you know, with a little money, you can make a pretty decent, you know, basement film. Not that I'm saying your films are basement material.
And then the basement of my apartment building at that time was used as the basement in Slime City, and it was used as the coroner's office and a drug den in Undying Love. So they are basement films. Slime City was made for $50,000 in 1986, shot on 16mm film. That was when the rule of thumb is that you couldn't possibly make a 16mm feature for under $60,000, and I did it. 20 years later, when I did the sequel, much bigger film, and we had to fly, you know, 3-4 people in from out of town and put them up, also cost $50,000. It was just the difference in technology allowed us to make a much bigger film for the same budget, not even allowing for inflation. So Slime City Massacre, and my previous release film Killer Rack, those were all done for $50,000. And the other films that I've either directed or produced were done for way less than that. So it's fine to call them bargain basement. I've stepped up my game with Johnny Gruesome, and I'm doing another film this summer also for $250,000. So now I'm at a level where I can hire professional actors, professional crew, and very slick-looking productions.
Nice. I'm glad that you're able to have that opportunity. I mean, it's not often that you get that chance to have that you know, production crew that will be a little bit more professional than some of your, you know, run of the mill. Okay, let's show up 2 days later on the set. You know, did you have any problems with anyone not showing up, you know, while you were filming any of your films?
No, everyone that I've worked with has always been committed to the project and have been reliable people. I'm not going to say there were never any difficulties. There have been, but everyone's always been professional as far as showing up. You know, you hear horror stories
Yeah.
from people who have that, but I gotta say, in most of those cases, half the problem lies with the filmmaker because they really don't do the pre-production planning, and they don't keep actors in the loop. You know, they think you tell them once you got to be here, and you send an email, and that's enough. You have to stay on top of people and keep them in the loop and keep them informed. And if you do that, usually everyone shows up. That's not always the case, but I think usually it is.
Okay. So, I mean, you sometimes I've come across, you know, filmmakers that have had that issue. So it's good that you have not have had that problem in the past with other film actors, and that's awesome. So,
Well, it can also depend on where you live. I mean, if you're in Ohio, you might have a harder time finding people who take this seriously. I'm in Buffalo, where we have an active theater community, and over the last 4 or 5 years, our film production slate has exploded. So I'm surrounded by a fairly strong talent pool, and nobody would want to getting out that they're unreliable. That's the kiss of death in the other productions. And if anyone screwed me over like that, I would make sure everybody knew about it. I'm not subtle.
So, ultimately, with Undying Love, can you tell us a little bit about the story, or anything, just enough to tell our listeners and viewers out there?
Well, I always liked the film noir movie Double Indemnity, which is about Barbara Stanwyck seduces Fred McMurray so that he will help her kill her husband. And I basically wanted to tell that noir story in the vampire world. But I also wanted to make it an anti-vampire film like Martin. I wanted none of the tropes. I didn't want the fangs, the brows, and any of the cliches. I was trying to deconstruct the vampire mythology. And I also loved the razor blade imagery in Martin. So I opened the film with a suicide by razor that's pretty effective. We shot that movie in 2 weeks on a lower budget than Slime City, and it got a really good review in the Daily News, and then it disappeared for a couple of years. And when it was released on video finally, the distributor changed the title to New York Vampire. And I was, I worked hard on that title, Undying Love. And they threw exactly the type of title on it I didn't want. But once it got re-released on the Slime City Grindhouse collection, they allowed me to restore the original title. So nice. It's a more obscure film even than Slime City, and Naked Fear is even more obscure than that. But they are available, and anybody who's interested in my work, my early work, can certainly check them out. I consider those 3 films that I made in New York City, Slime City, Undying Love, and Naked Fear, the equivalent of my film school. So I'm lucky or cursed that my film project, so to speak, our film school project, so to be, are available.
Awesome. Now, ultimately, you were starting to talk about Naked Fear. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that film and how you got into that? Like you did with Undying Love.
When I moved to New York City, Robert Eben was the first friend I made. We worked at the same movie theater, and for a brief time, he stayed at the YMCA dorm where I was at. So he was in a Super 8 film I made, and when I did write Slime City, I wrote the lead for him. For Undying Love, I gave him a supporting part as sort of the Renfield of the piece, and the lead was played by my friend Tommy Sweeney, who's the brother of D.B. Sweeney. And then for Naked Fear, I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to take the lead from Slime City and the lead from Undying Love and pit them against each other? So the story, it's a thriller. It's about a guy who has agoraphobia, so he never leaves his New York City apartment. But he takes in a roommate because he's lonely. And the roommate turns out to be a serial killer who has claustrophobia. I'm a big fan of The Odd Couple, so it's sort of my twisted take on The Odd Couple. And we did shoot it on High 8 for, I don't know, $8,000. At that point in time, High 8 was going to revolutionize the film business. Well, it was so unrevolutionary between audio problems and picture dropouts that it took almost 5 years to finish and pretty much broke my spirit. I gave up film several years. I moved into writing novels. I've had 12 horror novels published and some nonfiction. And Johnny Gruesome would be the Johnny Gruesome music video was my first step back into the arena, because it turned out that mini DV, which was the form of digital filmmaking at that time, was everything that High 8 was supposed to be, but wasn't. And I said, I could probably do something on lower budgets with this format, and that eventually led to Slime City Massacre.
Awesome. Brandon, since you watched Gruesome, why don't do you have any questions about Gruesome person?
I actually did like how the format was presented as a music video, though it was kind of interesting. I admit I had to watch it several times because my copy broke down a couple of times in the middle. But at the same time, I did find that it was, I thought it was over at the end of the one song, and then it moved on to the next part. So it was kind of surprised there, sort of like a mini horror rock opera, I guess would be the.
Yeah, it's a very weird hybrid. And what happened there is we decided we were going to do the music video, and then the musicians did another song. I was like, wow, I want that song too. And so it became 2 music videos with a bridge. I don't know what it is. It's sort of a music video, sort of a short film, definitely a promo piece. Ultimately, it's just sort of a little footnote to the actual film. It's funny though, a few people interviewed me when I went into production on the film, and they all kept insisting that they had watched the trailer. And I was like, no, there's no trailer. We just finished shooting a month ago. And they had found the whole thing and could not tell that something uploaded 10 years ago was not a trailer for a new movie I made. So I had to be very patient in explaining things to some of the people in the horror podcasting realm. I'm kind of tempted to take it down, but it's had so many views because Misty Monday is in it that I figured I'll leave it up there. Can't hurt anything.
Nah. So ultimately, let's talk about Slime City Massacre. Moving forward, now you had been out of the film industry for a while. What ultimately brought you back? You say it was gruesome.
That was me learning how to use the equipment, experimenting with the new technology and seeing what was possible. Okay. But two other things played a factor in it. Number one, I was supposed to direct a feature called Prison of the Psychotic Damned, made by Red Scream Films.
Okay.
Which was going to be shot at a location here in Buffalo, an abandoned train station. And I ended up not doing that film because I just could not get along with the producer. But I said, we've got all these great locations. What if I did a Slime City sequel in a post-apocalyptic world? And then, we're in the 30th anniversary of Slime City now, but for the 20th anniversary, myself, Robert Sabin, and my friend Mary Huner, who's the female lead, who played both roles in Slime City, okay. We were invited to a film festival, a great film festival called the Beloit International Film Festival in Wisconsin, to screen the film as part of the 20th anniversary. And I was able to hang out with the two of them for a whole weekend. And, I kept looking at Mary, especially, who had aged into such a strong person. I kept thinking, wow, it would be great to turn her into an action hero. And these thoughts, as soon as I went back, I wrote the script. And the appeal to me was to deal with that backstory, but also to do a post-apocalyptic film, which I had never done. And quite honestly, my approach going into that film is I didn't care if I ever made a film again after that. I wanted to make one film for myself that I believed was a well-made movie. Okay. And, there are some people who like the film. There are fans of the original who don't like it at all because they don't like that it wasn't shot on film and that it is this weird post-apocalyptic thing. But of all the films I've made, it's the one that I like the most, that I'm proudest of. That I just don't think there's anything else like it. It's such a weird little film.
Most definitely. Now, was there anything that you can remember that happened on set that you could say that was like out of the norm, or something that you can specifically remember? Sometimes I've heard odd stories. I like hearing about some of the behind the scenes. Sometimes they're fuck ups, sometimes they're not. Was there anything that happened out of the norm on your set?
Yeah. Well, overall, it was the best experience I've had making a movie other than Slime City. And I'm talking about all the films I've worked on as well. And I've worked on a lot of other films for other people. I've worked for Frank Henenlotter. I've worked for Fred Olen Ray. I've worked on a lot of films. It was another summer film, and Debbie Rochon and Lee Perkins and a horror author named Keelan Patrick Burke were the three out of town leads, and a local gal named Jennifer Beal was the local lead. Those three actors I put up in a college house that was empty for the summer.
Okay.
And it was just another one of these great experiences, except that I had the advantage of having really strong actors. I remember the day that Debbie gave this monologue about her character, where she talks about why she became this fugitive in this weird post-apocalyptic future, and I almost had tears in my eyes on the ride home. I was just so happy with it. But the memory that will stick out for me was not a pleasant memory. Jennifer, who's the blonde actress in the film, I cast her mainly because she looked a lot like Mary from the first film. And I thought, oh, this is interesting, sort of a next generation type thing. There's a scene where she's wearing the bandages and the sunglasses, and she beats a bum abuser to death. And we were shooting in this abandoned train terminal, and she skipped off to go to the bathroom.
Okay.
And there were these, I guess you would call them access holes in the floor, like maybe 8 feet long and 4 or 5 feet wide, that would normally have some sort of metal grate over them, but there was nothing there. Crackheads probably stole the metal to sell or something. And she didn't see it, and she went over the edge, and as she went down, she reached out to grab a piece of rusty metal that almost cut her finger off. I heard a slam, and I ran over, and she was sort of clinging to the side like Spider-Man, and I jumped down there and I pulled her out, and somebody who knew better held her hand up, to stop the bleeding, and she was like, "I'm okay," but blood was gushing out of her finger, so we had to send her to the emergency room, of course, and a fire truck showed up and police cars, and it was horrible. And I went to the hospital after the incident, and her boyfriend had showed up and had fainted at the sight of the blood. And she showed up on set the next day with a bandage on her finger, and 2 days later had surgery to save her finger, to save her tendons. And so in the film, she doesn't have a bandage on. She has a bandage on. She has a big bandage on. There's no continuity. And I added a little scene of Keelan wrapping a bandage around her arm. And Debbie Rochon sat me down and she said, "Listen, something similar happened to me. If you know the story, she picked up what was supposed to be a prop machete, and it was a real machete, and it slid right through her fingers and also almost severed her tendon. And she told me, this is what's going to happen. They're going to do this, they're going to do that, and she's going to be fine." And because it was really hanging heavy on me. I've never had anyone get hurt on a set, and it was a bad lesson to learn that we should have had somebody go in there ahead of time and place cones around any danger areas, so there's no chance of anyone being careless taking a fall like that. As it turns out, we Debbie, Keelan, myself, and some of the crew people all got SCM tattoos. It was the actor's idea, and I had to go along with it. I'm not a tattoo guy at all. Jennifer did not get a tattoo, but the scar from where they sewed her up was in an S. So she has one as well.
Very cool. So ultimately, as you said, after filming Slime City Massacre, you said that you have made a Johnny Gruesome feature. Now, from what I understand, you have grabbed the young actor who played Jack Sparrow for the role, correct?
Yes, Anthony Lee LaTorre, who plays young Jack Sparrow in the last Pirates of the Caribbean movie, and is also in the upcoming Lords of Chaos about the black metal church burnings and murder in Norway. Okay. He actually responded to a casting ad, and his audition for another film that he sent me blew me away. And it turned out he's a musician, so I looked at all these music videos he did. And 4 o'clock in the morning, I woke up my wife, who's co-producer on my films, and said, "You've got to see this." And we were both like, "This is him. This is the guy we got to have." and it worked out. He's fantastic in the film. And we also cast Michael DiLorenzo, who was one of the two leads of New York Undercover on Fox for 3 years. That was a big hit show, like Miami Vice. You know, it was the first urban rap cop show.
Okay.
And those were our two leads, and pretty much everybody else that I worked with before films.
Awesome. So now, was there anything that you can say that happened on the set that you can say per se without saying too much?
On Johnny Gruesome?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, there are no interesting stories because the shoot ran like clockwork. At this point in my life, I know how to plan a film, how to execute a film, and I know to surround myself with production people who know what they're doing. So literally nothing interesting happened other than the climax of the film takes place in a creek. So
Okay.
I did go in the water with the actors, and I did have my assistant director, Sam Qualiano, who's the director of Snow Shark, Ancient Snow Bees, and The Legend of Six Fingers. When we knew there was a snapping turtle in there, we made him go in and scare away the snapping turtle. So the rest of it says. But literally, nothing interesting happened. It went off without a hit. Well,
Understandable.
and it looks great. And you know, that CD I mentioned that was based on the book Johnny Gruesome. There were 8 rock songs. I think we used 6 of them in the movie. So 10 years later, they served their purpose. And Robbie Takak from the Goo Goo Dolls performs a new theme song for us. So there's action value in this film, and I can't mention who right now, but we have a really good distributor, and I think come October, a lot of people are going to pay attention to it.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Brandon, did you have anything that you wanted to ask him before we wrapped up this podcast here?
Actually, there was one thing I had been wondering, and it's kind of just an entertaining side note for me. The cleaver used in the original and in the Slime City Massacre, which I believe was the same cleaver. You'd had it mailed to you. Now, you had said that you had still had it with you at that day. Do you still have that cleaver? Do you still actually have the cleaver from the films?
Well, the cleaver was purchased by Scott Coulter, who did the effects on the original film. And when I wrote the script, I said, oh, it would be cool if she had that same weapon, and if she said the same line, die, goddammit. And I emailed Scott Coulter, who for many years ran an effects lab in Bulgaria that did a lot of sci-fi channel type movies and stuff. And now he's running a company in LA. Scott and Tom both went on to have very successful careers as effects artists. And I said, Scott, just out of curiosity, do you happen to have that meat cleaver? And he said, Greg, as it turns out, I just happen to be back in the States and I have it in storage, and I'll be happy to send it to you. So it is the same cleaver 20 years later. I didn't hang on to it. I can't hang on to anything for 20 years. I'm terrible. I'm a pack rat for about 6 months, and then I have to get rid of things. But now I have it. It's upstairs in my office. It's not in a shrine or anything. I'd have to dig around for it. But I'm doing an appearance this weekend, a 30th anniversary screening in Philadelphia, and I'm going to take it with me, and hopefully some of the fans will have.
Very cool. Now, from what I understand, because it's the 30th anniversary, you're going to be at where this weekend?
It's Exhumed Films is doing the Class of 1988 marathon. So I'll be there. Bill Lustig will be there with Maniac Cop. Joe Augustine will be there with Night of the Demons, which he wrote and produced. And then they're also shooting The Blob and Waxwork. And all of the films are going to be screened off of film. So I think the other ones are all 35 millimeter. Ours is in 16. It's the cut that played as a midnight movie that I subsequently edited 6 minutes out of because they drove me crazy. So it's very painful for me to sit there and watch what I consider some of my worst material in this extended cut. But the audience will get it out of it.
Oh, yeah. Most definitely. So there you have it, folks. From the mouth of the slime himself. So thank you for coming on, Mr. Lambertson, and appreciate you coming on such short notice. And playing the back and forth link tag there for a little bit, but we got you on, and we got you recorded. And believe it or not, it's when I first saw this 8 years I saw it 8 years ago. It was one of my favorite films, and to me, actually talking to you is kind of like a dream. So even though I know we've been friends for quite some time, we haven't really, chit chatted. So
this is true. Thanks for having me on. I'm in pre-production on a film that I'm going to be shooting in August, so I'm home, just planning the film every night. I don't go out at all. So something like this comes up, yeah, I'm available. Anything to promote. I have to do some. I made a big deal out of the film for its 20th anniversary and 25th, and I just haven't really had time. So anything to do to shine a little spotlight on that, I'm happy to do.
Well, what I'm going to do for you is, even though we did this, this is actually the first time I've actually done an interview with live video, believe it or not. So you're my first live video interview. Every other interview has actually just been audio. I just didn't want any other mess ups to go along the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this into an audio file, and I'm going to send you it with my extended intro that I've created for the show, and you can have it as an MP3. I'm going to turn it into a free file.
My family can't wait to hear me talk about this film yet again.
All righty. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and hopefully folks out there that are listening definitely check out what's happening this weekend for him. Brandon, did you have anything else that you wanted to ask? Or?
Well, just thank you for having me on tonight. I will also be trying to shine a spotlight on the film, actually the Blu-ray set for our own channel. And as I'm doing my deep analysis into it, and I appreciate you chatting tonight.
Now, Brandon, as I explained to Dave before, don't pull any punches just because we've now had this personal time together. Just try to be funny in your criticisms.
And also don't let what we've just had, pilfer any of your opinion, so to speak. So in any case, thank you for your time, and I appreciate what you did for me tonight. So stay tuned. Tomorrow we are actually going to have, because Brandon is with our discussion group, he's going to be on tomorrow with us talking about your Slime City. Tomorrow with believe it or not, we have a dead girl from Dead Guard's Dark Coffin Classics, which is a local Kenosha horror host. She comes on and talks with us and some other fans. So we're gonna have a all out smart film discussion about your film. So definitely check that out tomorrow night around 9. So in any case,
I think after all the time, I've deserved some smart analysis. Yes.
In any case,
thank you for stepping up to the plate.
Definitely. Everyone say good night to the fans that are out there.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, all. And stay tuned for more and exciting things on this channel. So definitely check us out. Like and subscribe.